Let's talk about Only Yesterday, Ghibli's most introspective and grown-up film to date. Only Yesterday was released in 1991 and directed by Isao Takahata, Ghibli's co-founder and the visionary behind Grave of the Fireflies and The Tale of Princess Kaguya. Unlike most Ghibli films, it wasn't really aimed at children. It's slow and subtle, and for years it wasn't even released in North America with an English dub. But it has this kind of emotional resonance that lingers longer than these fantasy epics. While Miyazaki gave us worlds to escape into, Takahata gives us grounded stories, the real world, and asks us to take a second look at it. Only Yesterday unfolds across two parallel timelines. The present, where 27-year-old Taeko travels from Tokyo to the countryside, and the past, where her 10-year-old self navigates the confusing, awkward world of elementary school. The structure is deceptively simple. She's just going on a trip, right? But the moment she boards the train, her memories start to resurface, not in a dramatic, plot-driven way, but in spontaneous flashes. These aren't epic revelations, they're deeply personal recollections. She remembers how excited she was to try pineapple for the first time, just to be let down and have her sisters say that bananas are better? Are you kidding me? I was looking at the screen being like, guys, the pineapple isn't even ripe yet, calm down. Pineapple's not even my favorite fruit. I just thought it was funny. She remembered how embarrassed she was when the girls started to get their periods and boys would just be making fun of them, and how she dreaded being made fun of. She remembers how a classmate's crush made her feel confused, proud, and ashamed all at once, and when she talks to him, the emotions that flooded her. And what's genius is how natural this all feels. The film doesn't signal these flashbacks with dramatic music or visual effects. They just slip in, like real memories do. You're walking and suddenly you're in your old classroom. You're working out on a farm and suddenly you're in your childhood kitchen. It captures that very adult feeling when you think you've moved on from your past, but something as small as a smell, a sound, or a quiet moment brings it flooding back. And through this back and forth, we begin to understand Taeko's internal struggle. The adult version of herself is calm and polite, grateful to escape Tokyo, but unsure what she's actually looking for. The child version of Taeko is more expressive, more stubborn, more full of wonder and confusion. She doesn't just remember her childhood. She begins to see how much of that little girl she's silenced. And slowly, memory becomes something more than nostalgia. It becomes somewhat of a map, a guide to understand how she became who she is, and whether that's still who she wants to be. Visually, Only Yesterday is unlike any other Studio Ghibli film, and that's saying something. While many Ghibli movies burst with color and imagination, this one holds back. It's restrained, quiet. The present-day scenes where adult Taeko works in the countryside are grounded in warm, earthy tones. Everything feels real. The sweat on her brow, the soft sway of sunflowers, the subtle way light filters through the leaves. Even her smile has that wrinkle showing that she's 27 years old. Not that you should have that many wrinkles when you're 27, but anywho. There's a strong emphasis on naturalism, and for good reason. Director Isao Takahata wanted to tell a story that looked and felt like real life, without the romantic sheen that animation often brings. But the flashbacks? Those are a different story entirely. When we're taken back to Taeko's childhood in the 1960s, the art shifts. The colors become soft and almost watercolor-like, and more noticeably, the backgrounds often fade into black-white space, as if the memory isn't fully formed. And that's done on purpose. These aren't perfect memories, they're fragments, emotional snapshots, and the visual design reflects that beautifully. We're not meant to see the world exactly as it was, we're seeing it as Taeko remembers it. And that kind of emotional honesty is what makes Only Yesterday feel so intimate. Even the character animation is more subtle than in most Ghibli films. Facial expressions are grounded and natural. Taeko doesn't flail her arms or widen her eyes in typical anime fashion. Instead, she hesitates. She glances. She exhales. And every small movement carries weight. And then there's the sound design. Often overlooked but essential here, the countryside scenes are filled with the sound of cicadas, rustling leaves, and quiet footsteps in the dirt. There's very little music, and when it does come in, it's used sparingly. more like a memory surfacing than score pushing the emotion. It's the kind of movie where silence isn't a gap, it's part of the language. There are a lot of scenes where nothing really happens, and at first, it might feel like the film is dragging, like it's stretching out scenes with no purpose. And these scenes have no dialogue, nothing. It's quiet. But then something strange happens. That quietness starts to open up space. You begin listening more closely, not to the film because nothing's happening, but to yourself. You begin to think about your own memories. How was your elementary school experience? What awkward moments stuck with you? Which ones still make you cringe, or which ones still make you smile? How are your family dynamics growing up? Did you feel seen, misunderstood, encouraged? What tiny, seemingly forgettable moments somehow became core memories? But Only Yesterday isn't about childhood and the memories they're in. It's about what happens after. Taeko is 27, not quite young, not quite old. She's in that in-between phase where you're supposed to have things figured out, but don't. She has a steady job in Tokyo, she's independent. On the surface, everything looks fine. But beneath that is a quiet discomfort. Like, she's living someone else's life and only just noticing it. The flashbacks to her 10-year-old self don't just serve as nostalgic detours. They're mirrors. Mirrors that reflect a version of her that's more expressive, more emotional, more herself. You start to realize that this trip to the countryside isn't just a vacation, it's a therapy session. A space where she can finally ask questions that she's ignored for years. Do I actually like this life that I've built? Am I doing what I want, or am I just doing what's expected of me? She doesn't have a breakdown, she doesn't spiral. That's not how this film works. Instead, she listens. She listens to that child inside her, the one that felt so much, asked too many questions, and was slowly taught to tone it all down. There's a particular powerful moment late in the film where a farmer named Toshio challenges her, not aggressively, but honestly. He asks why someone from the city would come out to the country to work on a farm. She tells him she's just helping out, but it's clear, she's searching for something. That conversation, like so many in the film, is gentle but piercing. Because when we're adrift, we don't always need answers. Sometimes we just need someone to see us clearly enough to ask the right questions. And through these conversations, through these reflections, Taeko begins to realize something. Maybe adulthood doesn't mean becoming someone entirely new. Maybe it means reconnecting with who you already were before life told you to grow up and fall in line. And that's the entire movie. No grand twist, no magical reveal, just a 27-year-old woman trying to figure out what to do with her life, who she is, and doing that by remembering who she used to be. It's a simple structure. That's literally the whole plot. And if you tried pitching that to someone, they'd probably say, that sounds boring. They might write it off before the credits even roll. So why did I love it so much? Because Only Yesterday captures something that most films don't even try to touch. The quiet, invisible crisis so many of us live with, especially today. In a world with endless options, unlimited knowledge, and countless career paths at our fingertips, we still find ourselves stuck. We chase security, we take the job that pays well, and we tell ourselves we'll figure out the rest later. But later never really comes. And before we know it, we're coasting through life. Not unhappy, but not alive either. That's Taeko's story. She's not falling apart, she's not broken, she's just unfulfilled. And the film doesn't scream it, it whispers it. In the silence between conversations. In the moments where she smiles politely but looks away. In the way her childhood self keeps showing up asking, what happened to the girl who wanted more? Watching this film made me realize how rare it is to see stories about people who aren't lost, but who haven't fully found themselves. And that space in between, where most of us are in, is where Only Yesterday chooses to be. Only Yesterday isn't the kind of movie you finish and immediately recommend to everyone. It's quiet, it's slow, it's a slice of life movie that doesn't hand you any clear answers. But maybe that's the point. In a time where everything is optimized for attention, fast, loud, and instant, this film dares you to pause. It invites you to sit with your own story. It reminds us that reflection isn't something reserved for old age. You don't have to be lost to ask, am I where I want to be? And maybe the answers aren't in a career change or some bold new chapter. Maybe they're just sitting quietly in the past, waiting for us to look back with honesty. I didn't expect to be moved by this film, but I was. Not because of what happened in the story, but because of what it made me think about in my own life. So if you ever feel like you're coasting through life, like something's missing but you can't quite name it, watch Only Yesterday. Not for escape, but for reflection. Because sometimes, growing up doesn't mean charging forward. Sometimes it just means remembering who you were and deciding who you want to become. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please help me out by subscribing, give a thumbs up, and recommend this to your friends, and comment below what you thought about Only Yesterday. And if you want me to talk about any other movies, please let me know. I love watching them, love talking about them. Anyways, that's pretty much it for me, so peace.